Welcome back. Here we are now in front of the Dillon, ready for what I call phase one of the Dillon processing. And there will be two phases. This first one is what I would call, and I guess everyone else would call, brass prep. We're not actually loading it. At this point, we are putting the fine tuning on the brass, getting it ready for loading. And here's what happens. Up here in station number 2, we've got a Lee decapping die. You can use anybody's decapping die. In fact, you could use a number of things here, but the idea is that all that happens is a pin punches through the primer pocket, the flash hole, and that knocks out any primer that's there. Also, if we had brass that didn't have a primer in it, then in that case we would be knocking out perhaps some walnut shells or corn cobs that got jammed in there during the pre-cleaning process, the initial cleaning process. It's not pre-cleaning, it's cleaning, right? But it's the initial one. We're going to do another one later. Over here we have the Crimping Station, and I did a greatly detailed video about that very recently. So if you want to know more, just look. I'm not going to get into it here. Over here, we skip the priming. We're going to do that later. Over here is a combination deal. That motor is sitting on top of a full-length resizing die. So we're going to full-length resize. We're not going to do just the neck. We're not going to do just the body. We're going to do all of it. And we're going to bring it down to the minimum SAMI specification so it will fit any rifle out there, whether it be a semi-automatic, a bolt action, or lever action. I don't know. Anybody make a lever action 223? Henry? I don't know. I don't think so. It's an idea, though, isn't it? So that will do all that. It will trim it to length, whether it needs it or not. It's going to trim. It's going to attempt to trim it. If it's already within spec, it won't touch it. It doesn't matter. And there's a hood, a little shroud that goes around it, and a vacuum cleaner attaches and pulls away the chips. And let's go in close here and look at this, because it is kind of interesting. When you purchase the R1500 case trimmer, you get the motor, power cord with quick disconnect, the vacuum shroud, and the carbide cutter. So that is a one-size-fits-all package up to 50 BMG. You'll also purchase a full-length size and trim die for each cartridge you wish to trim. This die is a standard full-length sizing die with a hole at the top of the sizing chamber where the top end of the brass case sticks out for trimming. And also at that point is a pair of windows on each side so the chips can be sucked out by your shop vac. Above the cutting zone is another threaded portion which fits the cutting motor. You start with nothing but the die threaded into the tool head like any other sizing die, except you put the lock ring on the underside. Be sure your cases are well lubricated, because they absolutely will stick in the die if not. And furthermore, if you stick one and you attempt to back it out with a press, there's a 90% chance the case will split, leaving half of it stuck in your die. And if that won't make your day, I don't know what will. Adjust the die like you would any sizing die, starting with the die touching the shell plate and then backed off one full turn. Use a case gauge and repeat sizing until your case fits the gauge properly. Be sure the locking ring is tight and the case is lubricated each time you test. And before you put it into the case gauge, wipe the case clean of all lubrication and any loose particles, because either of those will throw off your reading in the gauge. And it's also a good idea to wipe out the gauge each time. You can use a cleaning rod and patch for that. I use my own concoction, this what I call Lano heat, because it's a mixture of lanolin and heat. Do I have any up here somewhere? Anyway, heat is a product you can buy in automotive stores or on Amazon or what have you. It's isopropyl alcohol. You want to get heat iso, and you mix it. I forget the ratio. I did a whole video on this. You mix it with just some lanolin, which you can buy in liquid form from Amazon, but it's about a 12-to-1 ratio, I think. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, shake it up really good. a method that I have found that works really well is to use this really heavy box, which actually was a box some ammo came in, and fill it about half full. Now that's a little over our 5 pounds right there, but something in that neighborhood. And shake the sucker up and just spray the heck out of it. Then, because it's not full, you mix them around and just do this 3 or 4 times until you're just choking to death from the alcohol fumes. Hopefully you'll get a bunch of it into the mouth of the mouths of the cartridges, and that will lubricate that M-dye plug that's going in at the very end to do the neck expansion. And I'll do one more just for good measure. I tell you what, I don't know that you can overdo this if you let it dry properly. If you put too much lube on a case, you can get dents in it, but I haven't seen any dents using this method. This stuff is dissolved in this particular sprayer. Puts out such a fine mist. I don't know if you can see it. Let me do it. Maybe you can see how fine the mist is on this thing. Let's see. Hopefully. Anyway, that's it. And I think just a pure lanolin base really can't be beat, but it is vital that you let this stuff, get this stuff on there. It's also important that you let it really dry thoroughly. I do them way in advance, maybe a day or two ahead of when I'm going to be doing it. So, but you got to understand, I'm this old retired guy, and I'm not in a hurry for anything. But give it a few hours anyway to dry. I mean, they'll tell you 5 minutes on some of these, like Hornady One Shot, but or whatever. But it needs to be really dry. It changes, and it really gets a whole lot better once it gets thoroughly dry. So anyway, slick 'em up, little reloader dude. With the case sizing die properly adjusted, now run a case that needs trimming fully into the die and leave the press handle at the bottom of the stroke. Thread the motor locking ring all the way down on the top of the sizing die. Remove the power cord from the motor with a quick disconnect and screw the motor onto the top of the die. Screw it down until it barely touches the case mouth. Always be sure now the motor locking ring is snug before turning on the motor. Lower the case about a ½ inch and turn on the motor. Run the case back up to full stroke, and if there is cutting, remove the case and check its length with a gauge or caliper. Otherwise, loosen the motor lock nut and turn the motor in or out as needed to reach the proper cutting amount. Look carefully after each adjustment to be sure the cutter blade is not touching the top of the sizing die, as it will shatter, and that will cause damage and it will injure you. Finally, attach the vacuum shroud to the assembly and your shop vac hose to the shroud. You'll probably need an adapter of some sort. I used a small hose that normally works with my wood router, and I also used a PVC coupling and a layer of heavy duct tape to get a good fit. So after it comes out of the resizing die, where it's been fully resized and trimmed to length, the sizing die brings the neck way down, just like any good resizing die would do, and then there's some method of expanding it. There's various and sundry ways. In this case, I'm using an M die from Lyman. And what the M die does is it has a straight stem that's followed by a flared part. The straight part is diameter 221, or 3/1000ths underneath the size of a bullet. Now the brass is going to spring back slightly, so the net result will be a neck that's about 2 thousandths smaller than the bullet, giving it a good grip. And then the very top of it is a diameter of about 225, which is going to flare the mouth ever so slightly. And I'm exaggerating here, but it's enough that the bullet can drop in there just enough so it won't fall out when it's moving from the bullet feeder station over to the bullet seating station later on. So we've got a bullet feeder that's going to drop the bullets in there, and then they're going to move around. Well, even if we were hand feeding them, they get jostled around. So you want those bullets to drop in there a ways, but not too much. You know, it's always Goldilocks, just right. So that's what this does. Falls out, and we're done. And at that point, then we'll give it a good cleaning and some stainless steel pins, and then we'll be ready for phase 2, which is pretty much the end of the road. All right. One of the most valuable accessories that you can have is a padded cushion for your feet. And this one is really thick. It serves double duty. My wife uses it in the laundry room next to it here when she's ironing. And then I get to use it in here. I'm too cheap to buy two, I guess. But make sure she's got one anyway. No, seriously, you want one of these to stand on, especially when your floor is hard like tile or concrete. Your back, ooh, well, thank you. And your knees, too, if you have to get down there to pick something up. Oh, this is great. Yeah. Those of you with sharp eyes probably noticed that this die right here got changed somewhere during the process. Originally, I had this Lee decapping dye in there, and I don't know if that'll focus or not. And it's just nothing but a big open hole and a decapping pin, but you can see the decapping pin broke. And the reason for that was when you're getting range-fired brass, you're just at the mercy of whatever anybody shoots. And apparently, some some frugal individual had purchased ammo from a less fortunate country that used Berdan primers. And Berdan primers have two flash holes on either side of the middle and not one in the middle. So when the punch came down there, you know, it went between where there's solid metal, and that stopped it. It would not have broken if the person who was operating the press had been paying attention and hadn't really climbed on it with all his might. Not saying who that was, not that it was a friend of mine, because it wasn't. At any rate, I had to put a substitute up. And pretty much anything will work as long as the cartridge will go in there and not touch anything on the outside. and that there's no expander ball on it to mess with the neck, and that the pin is for small rifle. Well, the handiest thing I had was this puppy right here, which is probably one of the most expensive dies I have. It's a Redding competition neck sizing bushing die. So what I did was remove the bushing, because all it did before was size the neck. So now it's not sizing anything, and the pin in there punches everything out. Plus, it's kind of neat. It's got a spring-loaded chamber that really lines everything up really square. Not that that matters at all on decapping, but it works. Probably the most expensive decapping die in history, but there you go. Well, did I just break another firing pin? Decapping pin? Probably. Oh, crap. I did it again. Alrighty, we've reached a stopping point, I guess you'd call it, in phase one. There will be several of these. These hoppers up here hold roughly 10 pounds or a little under of brass. And I like to process 5 pounds or a little under at a time. That seems to be about the amount that my tumblers and my cleaning systems can handle. And the reason for that is at this point, I've actually got 2 of these that are done, and one's actually finishing up its cleaning cycle right now. This one will be going into the cleaner in just a minute. There's 4.5 pounds of brass here, and that comes out to roughly 325 cases. I think there's like 73 cases per pound, so these are rough numbers, and it doesn't matter exactly, but the idea is that this amount is just about ideal for tumbling in the media with the stainless steel pins and the soapy water and that sort of thing. So that's what I've got. Now, why am I doing that? Well, for a couple of reasons. The brass is just absolutely sticky and coated with lubricant, because we really got to lubricate these to go through these full-length body resizing systems. The necks, while the case trimmer is absolutely incredible and leaves an almost flawless neck, it still has a fine bit of burr on it, just a tiny bit. You could actually load it like it is. But hey, we're going to go all the way. So we tumble into the stainless media, and that will polish those edges, those little rough edges around the neck, the mouth of the case. So this brass will come back clean. It'll also come back very smooth, and it's then ready to go into phase 2, which is reloading. So let's go get the ones out that are cleaning. We'll put these in and show you the cleaning process. Yeah, we're off to a good start, and we've got about twice as much to go, and then we'll move on to phase 2, and that's where we actually load the cartridge with bullets and primers and powder and all that. But this is the brass prep, and we'll see you on the next edition, and thank you for watching.